Well, and it makes the client so much stickier, right? You can't, the whole problem, like with Facebook ad, you can't control the algorithms. It is what it is. They start tanking like they have here recently with the iOS update and everything else. Well, now your client gets mad and you're doing Facebook ads, and the only thing you're doing for them is not working as great.
Yeah.
But when you get them on a SaaS product where you have their automations and their pipelines, and maybe you have some type of Stripe integration and calendar integration, well, all of a sudden it becomes that sticky client, kind of like in banking, where, oh my gosh, I have my checking account, my savings account, my kids account, my Christmas account, everything at this bank. I can't possibly go move all this. So it makes the relation, like I said, makes them much less likely to leave you and stay longer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing awesome marketing. Today, I'm joined by Amiee Ball. She's the founder and CEO of Entrepreneur Ecosystem, which is an online education platform that helps entrepreneurs become better business owners in a digital world. Amiee, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Chase.
I'm super excited. We were reviewing the show notes. We are talking about one of our favorite topics, which is SaaS. And you had mentioned, I saw a headline about how to turn a $297 SaaS client into a $2,000 SaaS client. Mm-hmm. So walk me through this. First of all, Amy's worked with a bunch of folks in the community to help them through the journey into SaaS mode. And so I'd love to hear, is this something that's pretty common with the folks that you've been working with?
Yeah, so I've actually worked with probably over 10,000 agency owners around the world. Wow. And it seems like the biggest problem agencies have is landing new clients. And, they do everything from cold calling, cold emailing, buying courses on Facebook ads and organic marketing and everything else. But the struggle continues to be across the board is, how do I land clients? How do I land clients? And I've been hearing that a lot with the SaaS model as well. So that's kind of been a big focus for us, because what people tend to do is, rather than kind of buckling down on one thing to get clients in the doors, they start looking at all those shiny objects and just thinking, well, this doesn't work, when in reality, that's not the case.
So it's a matter of focus. How do you help people through that challenge?
Yeah, I think it's not only focus, but on understanding from a prospecting position what actually still works and what doesn't. Business owners for so long have been getting hit with, let me help you get more leads in the door, or the email marketing, or the tactics, the SMS marketing, whatever. So rather than helping the business owner understand why all these things as a bundle is so important, we're still trying to sell tactically, and it just doesn't work anymore.
And so, well, first of all, let me ask you, what's the opposite of tactically, as you would explain it?
I think productizing the service, which is kind of what you do when you set up SaaS mode and go high level, right? Essentially, you productize it, you put it all into a bundle, but also understanding not only what the bundle does from a technical perspective, but also understanding how it's going to help the business owner based on what they're currently struggling with, what they need, and then from an outcome perspective, how much money is this actually going to make them?
Right. So sell the whole, not the drill, right? Don't focus on the features, focus on the outcomes. So let me ask you, there are kind of two schools of thought that I've seen a lot of people talk about recently. And one is, go start with your services, your high ticket, and then, work the software, the SaaS sale in there, versus start with the SaaS and sell the low ticket subscription for SaaS and then work up to your higher ticketed services. Which model do you like better?
Well, I think it depends on how you're selling them. If they're selling them directly from a website versus directly from, if they're running them to maybe a call or some type of discovery process, I think you're going to be hard pressed to sell a massive package from a website without extremely good content behind it. But I'm going to be honest, everything that we do, we run everyone to a call. I find that the churn is much lower. And we also get paid for the discovery calls.
So that's interesting. I mean, one, I would totally agree with you when you first made the statement without the second part, right? I would agree that you'll get better sales, less churn, if you do sales calls or some sort of webinar or something. But a lot of people like the idea. I mean, it's a very attractive idea that you could sell software and never have to talk to anybody, run ads to a page, people sign up, and I sit on the beach. Um, but because who wants to sit on all those sales calls, right? Who wants to do all that work? But to get paid for the work is another story. So how do you help people do that? Because that can be a challenge, figuring out how to get people to pay you for what's essentially a sales call.
Yeah. So, and it's actually pretty interesting. So this kind of started back when I was running my agency and I got into that whole time money conundrum where I'm doing everybody's picking my brain and all these business owners want to meet and sit down for coffee. And realistically, there was just a bunch of tire kickers. So when I actually did the math around the productivity, I realized that I was probably spending 70% of my time with people who were never going to buy from me.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing, I created what was called a digital blueprint. And essentially we would get them on a 20-minute call, identify, and it would come from various sources, whether it was Facebook ads or referrals or whatever prospecting tactic we were using. And within that 20 minutes, we would basically show them 3 quick formulas, understand as much as possible about their business, and pitch them on this blueprint that was $497. And I knew at that point that if they weren't willing to invest the 497 to understand the marketing processes that were necessary to grow their business, then there's no way in a million years they would have spent 497 with me a month
That's
or whatever
interesting.
we were charging.
So you basically that's a pretty interesting tactics. You're basically saying, look, I can show you the mile high view of success,
Mhm.
497.
Yep.
If you're not willing to at least go there, then I know you're not serious about actually executing on that blueprint,
Correct.
which is pretty
Correct.
interesting. I like it.
Yeah. And the beauty
Um,
of it is now it's that process runs like my 16-year-old actually does it. But it's
nice.
100% automated through Highlevel.
Okay,
And
so talk to me about that.
yep. So there's about 4 different stages that the client goes through from the time that they make a payment. It triggers everything from the intake forms, the questions, the workflows, the landing pages, sends them everything they need so we get the information that we need. At that point, we schedule a 60-minute discovery call, get a little bit more information. The blueprint is delivered through Highlevel, which is it's kind of done as a proposal. And from there, we'll hop on a 20-minute delivery call where we'll give them the deliverable and decide what product they're going to go into, and they pay right there from the Zoom call, and we move them into a monthly deal.
Now, how do you get people into the funnel? Are you running ads to a landing page that pitches the blueprint?
So anybody that comes through the top of the funnel for my agency goes through this process. Primarily though, historically, when we wanted to really kind of hit the ground running, right now we get so many referrals, but like if we ever want to beef it up, we launch Facebook ads, we run them to a free directory listing. We get leads for about $2 a piece on average. And the directory listing, once they fill out their information on a lead form, they are prompted to book a call with us so we can verify the directory listing information and make sure that we're putting everything out on the internet where it's supposed to be. And that's our 20-minute qualification call for the blueprint.
That's interesting. Okay, so talk to me about this tactic, right? And let's break this down. So a directory is just somewhere where a business gets to list their information, right? And so it can be a very effective tactic because what business doesn't want to be listed somewhere they should be? It's very easy to create FOMO, around directories and stuff like that. So this is an interesting tactic. Do you own the directory, or are you connected to some sort of program where you can just pump people into it? Can you give us any more of the secret sauce?
Yeah. So we actually own the directory that they're being listed on, whatever area or niche we're running it in. But the beauty of this is that if they don't go for the blueprint during the call, we also have Citation Vault, which we'll use as a downsell to just sell them additional directory listings.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Interesting. So talk to me about what's in the blueprint. So when somebody buys and they see the blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
what are they seeing? Is it SaaS? Is it services? Is it a mix of both? Is there ad spend as part of the equation? So what is it that they actually buy into?
So the great thing about the blueprint, and I come from a corporate sales and marketing background so we had been through every sales training known to man. And so what's so nice about it is that it's more of a marketing plan than a proposal. So it's about a 30-page document that tells them, to break it down for you, this is where you are, this is where you want to go, this is the problem that you've been having. And that's kind of where the magic math comes in. So I built out almost a calculator that will take their revenue, the number of leads they're getting in on a monthly basis, the number of times on average a customer purchases from them. We'll look at some close rates, some other numbers, and we'll make some very small tweaks within the numbers in order to show them exactly what they could be getting to with a small amount of work on our end. And then the products at the end, the 3 that we recommend, it's all automation. My agency, we don't do ads anymore. We don't do SEO, anything like that, simply because it's so easy to sell the automation. And 9 times out of 10 at this point in the game, that's what they need anyway. And so we'll show them, like I said, the impact that the automation will have on them monetarily in terms of, we can get more customers staying with you longer. We can get you an average higher sales value per customer because of the nurture and the customer journey and everything else. And then if we do, one of our pitches in the larger package is that in addition to the automation, we'll give you free unlimited leads that come through any of our digital assets that we own. So then it goes into the whole, okay, let's add more customers play as well. But you don't want to do that until you have the automation in place.
Yeah, this is an interesting tactic. I love it because one, in my experience, for that to work, your client is a business that's already succeeding to some extent, right? They're already in business. They've been doing business. They're doing pretty well. They're looking to improve. A lot of them may be already even paying somebody else to run ads, but they're still looking to improve. And then you go into that situation and it's like, oh yeah, we spend $1,000 a month in Google. It typically generates this many leads. And anybody with Highlevel, right, is like, okay, yeah, let me plug my system into that. And you're going to convert a lot more of them than you would before, especially if you pair it with like a long-term nurture. What are your thoughts on somebody who's not at that point? Because I can recall lots of conversations with potential new business where it's like, I don't know how many leads we get. We don't really, we get X amount of people walking through our door and it's like, no, those aren't leads. Those are, those are way further down in the funnel than what I'm talking about. So would you say, that's a red flag? You don't want to work with that kind of client, or what do you do in that situation?
So I think it depends. We don't typically work with startup businesses simply because what I found is that, like you said, if somebody's spending on advertising, I don't have to sell them on the fact that they should be spending on advertising. I just have to sell them on the fact that they should be doing it with me. We do come across those types of clients. And honestly, even business owners who are doing, you'd be surprised, $1 million, $2 million a year, sometimes don't track their numbers, which is an even better sell for them. Because then it's like, what do you mean you don't know your close rate? You know how much money you could be losing right now?
Yeah.
You're spending $5,000 a month on ads and you're not even really tracking anything. You don't know what your follow-up is. You don't know what your close is. You don't know what your average sale is. So then it becomes about an education play.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because a lot of businesses, when they start with ads and they just start seeing the activity, are completely fine to not be measuring because they're like, wow, we're in a better place. This is great. The phones are ringing. People are walking in. We're busy. But then after a year or two of that, they're like, all right, we need to like kind of get serious about this. Like, somebody's like, well, how well is this working? You know what I mean? And that's where a prime opportunity to install a system like Highlevel, because you can bring clarity to all of that.
Well, and even for agency owners that are, like you said, running ads right now, that's how relationships go south with customers. is when you're not tracking it for them and you're not doing this stuff. So it almost becomes imperative that if you are starting off with the high ticket stuff, like you were mentioning, the ads, the SEO type thing, that you make this as part of your product. I mean, that's what we did before we took all that out. And honestly, the only reason we took it all out is because this was so easy. But the whole thing with that is, if you make it part of your product, well, then you can obviously charge a little bit more for it. And again, just educating them that, look, we are so confident that this is going to work. The next bottleneck that you're going to have in your business is keeping up with what you have coming through. So let's go ahead and nip that in the bud right now. We're going to automate all this for you, and you're going to be much better off down the road. You're going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, you're going to be able to scale.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the magic math for a second, because I think when you watch a presentation that somebody that can do this, it's very impressive and it's very easy to close deals, right? Because you're like, well, look, let's break this down. If we tweaked this number by 2%, look at the outcome it creates. So essentially, all we're talking about here is, do you believe that we can tweak it by 2%? And I'm here to tell you that we can, or however you present it. But to get that formula, right, requires experience. Mm-hmm. And it requires measured experience. You need to actually be helping people measure things so that you can then go and figure out these sort of industry averages, I guess. Do you feel like the formula that you use works for any industry, or does it work specifically in one industry, or do you have multiple formulas? Like, how does somebody arrive to the point where they feel confident saying, yeah, this is typically like, the average close rate is this. How do you compare to that? Well, if we get you 2% closer to it, talk to me about how you came up with the formula.
Yeah, so some of it's kind of subjective. So, the cool thing about it is that you can actually back into it as well. So like I said, a lot of times I'll ask them, what's your, how many leads you're currently getting in a month? Of those leads, how many would you say you're closing, and what's your average sale value? And just from those numbers, I can calculate a revenue, right? So then if I tell them something like, okay, well, based on what you told me, it looks like you're doing about $30,000 a month. Is that accurate? And they might tell me, hell no, I wish I was doing 30,000 a month. Or they might say I'm doing more. So then we can kind of gauge where the pitfalls are and like, okay, well, then something's off in this number. So let's dig a little bit deeper, kind of thing. And the best thing about it is that it doesn't have to be exact. And I think that's where a lot of people get nervous. But as long as it's close enough, the reality of it is you tweak any one of those just a little bitty bit, and it's going to have an exponential impact on their revenue, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it also creates leeway, because in my experience, everyone will tell you that their close rate is way higher than it is.
Yeah.
So then you kind of get started and you actually track, and it's like, well, wait a minute, you said we'd be here. And it's like, well, your closing rate is nowhere near what you said it was. Like, talk to me about that. And then you have that kind of conversation, and they're typically like, yeah, we weren't really measuring it. I guess it's not as good as I thought, and et cetera, which is very common, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have that coming. Don't worry, this is very common, blah, blah, blah. But now you know what it is. And so, we're going to get it to where we talked about it being. But I think I was having this conversation on a webinar the other day. Just the clarity of a pipeline in Highlevel is a major improvement on most businesses, right? Most businesses that are paying for lead generation of some sort can't visualize it. It's just coming in one email at a time or something like that, or maybe like in a bulk spreadsheet. But they don't have the ability to see where everybody is in the process and actually see the rates of what's moving where and who's closing what. And so talk to me about the value of that. I mean, I feel like you mentioned that you scrapped a bunch of stuff because you're just now doing what's automated. And I feel like that's a piece of the story, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And we did it primarily because of a time perspective, and I hate running ads and I don't like having ownership over everything. Mm-hmm. So a bit of a control freak, but to answer your question, yeah, I think the pipelines are instrumental, because then, you can really start to hone in on where is the breakdown in our sales process. Because if you can see that, you're bringing in X amount of leads and they're moving to let's say if it's a contractor that you're using Highlevel to automate some of their stuff for, they're moving to a proposal and they're delivering the proposal, but the sale's not closing. Well, now with every step of the process that's broken down, you can immediately go to where the problem area lies, where that bottleneck lies. Whereas if you're not doing that with some type of pipeline tracking, then you have no idea and you're just guessing, and you might be breaking stuff that's actually working really well.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you that. So again, going back to the idea of like, I sold them an automated system. I'm going to be sitting on the beach drinking margaritas because it's automated, right? But you just brought up something that requires strategy, right? So if it's like, hey, I've been using your automated system for 3 months, things still aren't going great. You're like, let me take a look. You look in the pipeline and you're like, well, I can see right here, everyone's getting jammed up at this proposal stage. Mm-hmm. How do you not go out of the scope of a SaaS revenue model by saying, look, we're gonna have to sit down and talk about this. Like, I need to know, what do your proposals look like? What tools are you using? Like, do you do that? Do you have that mapped out as, hey, I estimate it's going to take, 5 hours to figure this out for you? How do you handle something like that?
So are you asking if they come to me and they're saying, okay, well, I haven't increased revenue, or I haven't done this, or it hasn't had an impact. And do I look at like the opportunities and stuff and see where they're stalling out and then kind of do some consulting?
Yeah. Like, do you do consulting on top of the automation?
I will do consulting on top of automation, but they pay a lot for it. And what I prefer to do is I'm a huge proponent of monetizing everything that you do in business. So what we'll have is like Contractor Academy, where they can pay an upgrade fee or something else to get access to this that has key things in it. Like, to your point, what do I do if this part of the pipeline has a low close rate, or if I notice that this is happening. And typically when you're working in the same niche or with the same type of business owners, or even maybe across the board, they're having the same problems, they're having the same issues. So you might be able to do, 5 or 10 videos and then add one every time that you notice that the same question's coming up 2 or 3 times. No different with automation. If you see you're repeating the same task over and over, do something to make it to where you never have to answer that question again.
Got it. Okay, cool. I like that. So you build out a library of
you do it in a membership
ancillary area. Guides that they have access to. Cool. Let me ask you one other question. Because you don't do ads, I feel like a lot of people are afraid to put themselves in that position because it's like, well, one day I'll lose out to somebody who is selling ads on top of a system. Do you have a network of partners that you say, oh, you do want to run ads? Let me connect you with somebody.
Yeah, I do have a pretty big network. But typically, like I said, the people who come to us are already getting leads in the door. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed, I think people have FOMO a little bit in the agency world. They're afraid to, like you said, say, well, I'm not going to do ads anymore. Or I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that say, oh, I hate writing content, or I hate doing SEO, or they hate something about their business. It's like, well, why are you still doing it? But those are the big money makers, right? Those are your high ticket. But the reality is, because of the way the recurring revenue works with a SaaS model, with the automation, is that you can probably get twice as many clients on, taking you up half the time, and make way more money, and be a whole lot happier in the long run.
Right. Yeah. I love the model. I talk about it all the time, being like a digital general contractor. Right. And it's like, oh, you need something that I don't do. Don't worry. I've got, I'll connect you with some people. And if they don't work out, I'll get rid of them for you. And I'll find, I'll bring in somebody else. But like, you trust me the most because I'm providing the CRM, the automation that's doing all the magic there.
Well, and it makes the client so much stickier, right? The whole problem, like with Facebook ads, you can't control the algorithms. It is what it is. They start tanking like they have here recently with the iOS update and everything else. Well, now your client gets mad and you're doing Facebook ads and the only thing you're doing for them is not working as great.
Yeah.
But when you get them on a SaaS product where you have their automations and their pipelines, and maybe you have some type of Stripe integration and calendar integration, well, all of a sudden it becomes that sticky client, kind of like in banking, where, oh my gosh, I have my checking account, my savings account, my kids account, my Christmas account, everything at this bank. I can't possibly go move all this. So it makes the like I said, makes them much less likely to leave you and stay longer.
So talk to me about going back to what you're doing for everybody in the community, the folks that work with with you. You mentioned that you have a blueprint, and I'm assuming it's not the same blueprint you're using when you're closing business directly, but you have a blueprint for building six-figure agencies. And I think, 3 steps I saw.
Okay.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So it actually is the blueprint that we use to close business.
Okay.
Um, Basically, we go through how to get the leads in the top of the funnel from an automated basis. We teach them how to do the directory listings and filter in through the Facebook leads and other different avenues. But then, once you start getting more leads, you start getting referrals, and just filter them down, filter them down. We teach them how to do the entire blueprinting process. We actually now, because it's all automated and high level, it's 1,000 times easier, because when I first launched this, probably about 4 years ago, we had Entreport, Calendly, Woofu, Zapier, like every different thing you could imagine. So it was kind of a hassle of a setup, but now we will literally go into like one of our members' accounts. We will do the complete setup and customization in high level form. We do the blueprint customization based on their products and their, their logo or branding or whatever. Set up all the workflows. So literally all they essentially have to do is turn it on. We have all the scripting, all the training. We show them how to do the calculations. They just put the numbers in the spreadsheet, tell them what to say. And I know for us personally, since moving to this model, I had a girl who, it was a funny story. I hired her as an esthetician. Well, not as an esthetician. She was an esthetician by trade. I hired her to do nothing but sell blueprints for me. She had never sold a thing in her life except eyelashes or something. And in her first month, she sold $10,000 worth of blueprints. Wow. And that doesn't even include, the clients that we brought on. And overall, like I have a 76% close rate for anybody who goes through the blueprint process to close them as a client.
Wow, that's fantastic. So this is the blueprint for the blueprint.
Mm-hmm. And so the 3 steps are, obviously filling the top of the funnel with these directory listing sites, these free sites, because it's an easy hook, pulling them through the blueprint and actually getting paid for doing stuff that you're currently probably doing for free. And then the third piece of it is increasing your close rates through your delivery of, again, not looking tactically at what's included in this, but more of how is this going to benefit you from a cost savings, time savings perspective and make you more money in the long run.
And that goes back to the formula, the magic numbers formula that kind of paints that picture.
Yep.
Very cool. So where can people go if they're interested in that program?
Yeah, so they can actually get a walkthrough of it if they go to insidetheupside.com.
Good domain.
I know. I buy a lot of them when they come to me. Some of them aren't that great, but they're kind of funny. So yeah, insidetheupside.com. And they just, watch a little video. And then if they want, we'll hop on a call with them, see if it's even something that would be relevant for them. If not, great. If it is, fantastic. But yeah, it's easy way to add another stream of revenue for sure.
Cool. So insidetheupside.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And, the more of these interviews that I do, the more, especially when we talk about SaaS and selling it and transitioning into it, I see a lot of patterns, and this fits right in with it, right? Typically, if we're talking 3 steps, like steps 2 and 3 are kind of similar, but step 1 is usually different. And that step 1 is always, you've got to come up with a unique low cost hook. And in your case, it's directories, which makes a ton of sense, right? Again, if I told you, hey, there's this great directory for your business and you're not on it, now I have FOMO, right? Why aren't I on it?
Exactly. So what do you mean? It's New Orleans business listings. I'm in New Orleans. What's going on?
Right. Exactly. It's a very tried and true tactic. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, I should have asked you earlier, does this work for all industries?
It does.
Cool. Awesome. So insidetheupside.com.
That's it.
Amiee, thank you so much for coming by to chat, and thank you for the great work you've done in the community.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chase. It was good to talk to you.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next one.